SteamyKitchen.com is my main business. And so we get 8 million page views a month.
Hey, welcome back, guys. If you're new around here, my name is Dean Hua. I am a digital advertising strategist focused on paid media advertising, helping both B2B and B2C companies with their lead generation. And the content on this channel reflects that. So we have a great episode today. In this episode, I'm interviewing Jaden Hare, who is the owner of SteamyKitchen.com. It is a food recipe and food blogging site. But this is not your ordinary food blogging website. This is one that generates more than 8 million views per month. And it's been in existence for well over 10 years. As far as I'm concerned, Jaden is the OG when it comes to being a food blogger. She's been around for quite a while. It's a site that's given the owner a 4-hour work week lifestyle. But not only that, it's a platform that's allowed her to sell both physical and digital products, which we'll talk about in this interview as well. In this first part of 2 episodes, yes, it's 2 parts to it, we talk about her background, her upbringing, how she got started being a food blogger more than 10 years ago, how her brand has evolved over the years, and what sort of pivots she's making during the current pandemic that we're in. In part 2, we do a deeper dive into the actual marketing tactics and strategies that she uses to help build her website and to generate those 8 million views per month. As well as we talk about how she builds out her marketing team, which is more than just her nowadays. So stick around for that one and part 2. Before we dive in, question of the day. What sort of out-of-the-box strategies are you guys using to help build traffic to your website? I would love to hear that in the comment section below. So with that said, we'll just dive straight into this interview. So let's get started.
Let's get it. Let's do it.
Let's go. Okay, so can you just give a backdrop as to your background and how long you've been doing this? Before you came on board, I was trying to figure out like what to call you. Like some people call you food blogger, some people call you food star, food influencer, food personality. Like what do you like to be called?
You know, the funny thing is when I first started, like this was 14 years ago when I first started, nobody knew what a blogger was. And so we had to call ourselves journalists because nobody knew what a blogger was. And it was, sort of like, oh, we don't know what you do. So, back then I referred to myself as, a food personality or a food writer. So for a long time I used food writer because I wrote cookbooks, but then I also did some television too. So I was in this weird hole where there was no, perfect term for what to put on your business card, like a title. And then when blogging became in vogue, then everyone knew what a food blogger was, and everyone knew what an influencer is. So, these days I stick with food blogger. It's just easier because my main business, even though I do so many different things, my main business is really the blog.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like, my preference, I'm just going to call you food personality because I think that's more all-encompassing. Like when I think of food blogger, I think of like just blogging, right? I don't necessarily think of IG, YouTube, and so on and so forth. My opinion. But yeah, so you've been in the business for 14 years. Unlike a lot of today's modern day food content creators, you have a lot of experience of media. You've been on major TV shows. Give me like your big picture view of how the landscape has changed from where you were 14 years ago when I think Facebook didn't even exist and social media wasn't even.
Facebook was there. Pinterest did not exist.
Yeah.
Twitter was just starting up. Back then when I first created the blog, within months, I knew like, oh my gosh, I'm going to create a business around this because this is what I would love to do. With no culinary background whatsoever. I never went to culinary school, but I'm really good in the kitchen and I love feeding people. That's my passion, is I love to feed people. And, I could cook. And so, I knew very early on that the key to being successful was 2 things. being multi-talented, and being on multi-platforms. So I'm going to
Even
take
back
on
then.
multi-talented. Yeah, I knew it back then. So I'll tell you what I did. Back then as a food blogger, we had to teach ourselves WordPress. I had to learn HTML. I'm not a techie person by any means, but we had to teach ourselves that so that we could, customize our own site. So the technical side, I had to teach myself. I also had to teach myself how to write recipes and edit recipes. Food styling, that's a whole nother art. Food photography is a whole nother art. So I had to teach myself that.
What's food styling, by the way?
Food styling is taking food and making it look really good.
Okay.
So for example, if you open up a magazine or a cookbook, you're like, oh my God, that looks so delicious. It's a food stylist that's touched it versus, you just throw something on a plate and you take a picture of it. So, even when you go to a restaurant and you have a plate that's presented in front of you and it looks beautiful, everything's balanced and there's, it looks delicious. Like you want to dive into it. That's food styling. So the art of making food look delicious.
Okay. So
yeah. So I had to teach myself food styling, food photography, editing in Photoshop, editing in Lightroom. Then we started doing video. So we had to teach ourselves using, back then we didn't have phones that had the video capability. We had these little, I don't even know what they're called. Like they look like little sticks but they had only one function, was to record video. We had to teach ourselves how to edit video. And so that's multi-talented, being able to do all of those things. And then the other side was being multi-platform, which was probably the best decision I ever made in my business. Being able to, not only be online and write, but actually writing is my least favorite skill. I'm probably, of all my skills, I'm worst at the writing.
I'm the same.
But learning how to have presence on television, learning how to have presence on radio, learning how to, even podcasts like this. Back then, we didn't really have podcasts. There was no such thing as podcasts back then. But, now it's like, how do you command presence while on a Zoom call, while it's being recorded, that's being recorded for television, that they're going to stitch together something because everyone's at home now. There's no going into the studio to do food, but, different platforms. I used to write for a newspaper. I used to write for online. I used to go on television a lot. I've done tons of radio. So, multi-platform was very important to me. And that also included social media too, though. For a while, I completely quit social media. Yeah. And I'm starting to dive back, tiptoe back into social media now.
Okay. So I guess in that regards, now it's 2020, you still have to be multi-platform.
You do, but I think because I have that longevity, steamykitchen.com is my main business. And so we get 8 million page views a month on Steamy Kitchen. That's a lot of page views. And from that, it's about 550,000 unique visitors that come every single month. They come to the site, and because I have the longevity, so things that I write about generally gets, favorable placement in SEO. So it's not as important to me now to be multi-platform. I get to pick and choose what I want to do. Like I have a team and I hate doing Instagram. So I have someone that helps me with Instagram. I hate doing Facebook. So I have someone doing that. And once in a while, I'll pop in and do, something live. But, at least having a little bit of presence. But because I think I did the hard work in the very beginning and created good content, created good content that search engines liked and that, that users liked, they would come back over and over again. That gave me the foundation to now be able to say, okay, I only want to do television, or I only want to do, the website. I don't want to do social media. It gives me a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, that's a great position to be in. So, it's 2020, the end of 2020. We're in a pandemic. What's it like being a food personality in a pandemic? Because I was watching a couple of your reels where you were on a morning show about a month ago.
Yeah.
And it's just so different now where they're there, you're there, and they can't do certain things where they kind of zoom in on the food. Like, what's that like from a logistical standpoint and mental as well?
Well, actually, mentally, I love it because I don't have to travel anywhere. Before, when I used to go to a television network, I would have to fly either to New York or wherever for that particular morning show. I lived in Sarasota, and I had to drive to Tampa. But it was like I had to lug this big, giant cooler full of everything, all my ingredients, all my cooking utensils. If I forgot the sponge, then my dishes don't get wild. Like, I had to think of every single little detail. And it's hard to cook in a kitchen that's not yours, and then having to remember all of these things versus this is in the comfort of my own home. And, surprisingly, the equipment that you need to pull something off like this is not that much. You just need some lights. And my laptop with a webcam and a good microphone is essential. But literally, like, my laptop was being balanced on 4 different cardboard boxes, and it was just so funny to see, like, oh my God, this is going on national television, and my laptop is on 4 cardboard boxes because it just wasn't high enough, and a webcam that I got for $100, and a blue snowball that was like a couple $100. It's different now, but I will say that it's actually. The good part of it is that it's more relatable. I'm in my home kitchen. If I can do this in my home kitchen, you can do this in your home kitchen. It's nothing super polished. And I kind of like that energy because that's more of my style anyways.
Okay. So one of the things, like, we met about, I guess, 6 or 7 months ago. And as I was learning about your story, one of the things that you told me was that you took, I guess it was a 5-year break.
Yeah.
Where you decided, and correct me if I'm wrong, where you decided to just drop everything. You kind of built your notoriety, your fame, if you will, and you dropped everything. Can you elaborate more as to why you did that?
Yeah. When I first started Steamy Kitchen, my goal, I actually might still have what I had written out, what I wanted to build was I wanted to build a brand. Like, my goal was, I'd love to have a cooking show on television, maybe on the Food Network. And so I was building towards that. I started small. I called up the local newspaper. I lived in a small town. The newspaper that gets thrown on your driveway on Thursday mornings that nobody ever reads, you just pick it up, throw it away. I called them and it's like, hey, I would love to give you a recipe once a week or maybe once a month, and for free, just publish it. And then I did that for a little while. And then a bigger newspaper called, Tribune, and then later on for Discovery Channel. And then the same thing for television. In order for me to get my practice, I had to start small, start really small. And I called the tiniest local television that was in my town, and I was on at like 5 a.m. Nobody ever watched the show at 5 a.m. And they had a little cooking segment. I said, hey, I would love to come on, and I would teach your viewers the difference between Cambodian food and Laotian food, and teach people the difference between soy sauce and fish sauce, and let's cook and have some fun. And I got my practice in, and then a bigger television station called, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. But I did my work, and I think that was my lesson very early on, was like, do your work. You have to hunker down. There are no shortcuts in the beginning. You just got to do the hard stuff first, the non-sexy hard stuff first, because you get your practice in. So what happened was, I was flying to New York all the time to do television, and I had little kids, they were toddlers, and they were always, I was always missing the big milestones in their life, like graduation from kindergarten or graduation from this, or they did this or they did that. And I said to my ex-husband, I was like, if I'm so close to my dream, why am I so unhappy? What is it that I'm doing wrong? And, it was just like right then and there, I said, you know what, this isn't about me. I have a family. I have to make the business work for me instead of me working for the business. And I get, this is a great opportunity for me to design whatever type of business that I want to do. So I shifted focus, and instead of, pursuing fame and glory and, ego-based types of projects, I focused on, I'm building something that I own. A producer doesn't own me. I own the website, and build the brand on my website. And we did it, and it was a lot of hard work. On Twitter, I was one of the pioneers on Twitter in the food space, and then I got on Pinterest, and it was, I also spent a lot of time teaching and giving back to the community and holding retreats and doing, courses when no one else was doing online courses. I had an online course, and when people were doing retreats on entrepreneurship and blogging, I was doing that so early on. I put so many of those events together, and I got really burnt out. The funny thing is when the camera turns on me and the camera points at me, I'm actually, really lively and, pretty much an extrovert. I've learned to project my energy out. But in reality, I'm more of an introvert. I like staying at home. I like doing, I like just being at home and doing, silly things like knitting and quilting and sewing and cooking. And I just decided, if this is my business and I get to create the rules, then here's my new rule is I only want to work when I want to work. And so I slowly built the business into, I guess, molded it kind of after Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week, where we shifted some focus away from recipes, and we shifted towards doing, fun things like giveaways on Steamy Kitchen and product reviews. It just snowballed. Like the giveaway portion of my website became so incredibly popular. We give away kitchen aids, we give away Cuisinarts, we give away, we started with little things like cookbooks because we'd always get cookbooks from publishers to give away. And people would enter these giveaways, and that became a big chunk of our traffic and our customer base. So, after a while, the site just ran by itself. Like I would only have to work just a couple hours a week, maybe launching a new giveaway or editing a recipe, answering customer comments. And the reason why it worked is because recipes are evergreen content. So if I write a recipe 9 years ago, it's still relevant today.
I completely agree with that. Although with that said, as someone who likes to cook as well and who's always looking up recipes, can you explain the logic? This is completely random, but what's the logic with bloggers who go on this sort of like 10-paragraph diatribe about nothing in the beginning that has nothing to do with food? About how they went on this date with their husband or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they finally get to the food part. Is that like an SEO thing or what?
Not at all. Completely opposite. Actually, the strategy changed. So before, blogging was a journalism. If you ever watched the movie Julie and Julia, about this girl who, cooked all of Julia Child's recipes. Back then, that's what blogging was about. It was a journal, we had readers because that was entertainment on the internet. That was, people wanted to hear the stories. People wanted to know why this recipe came about. And that was part of the appeal of blogging. Oh. And then it changed. And then it became more about SEO. And Google don't care when you went on a date with your husband. They want you to be to the point and solve a problem. So now you've got some people that are still in the blogging mode where it's journal. I'm journaling. This is my online journal. And then you've got recipes now that are so to the point that it's almost ridiculous. It's so stuffed full of the keywords and what people think. I'll be honest. I used to do that too. Yeah. I switched over to, Google, I'm getting so much traffic from search engines. I better write for search engines. And, and I think now people are coming back around like, okay, we know that if you sound like a robot, Google's not going to like you as anyways. And your customers, your readers won't like you anyways. So I think people are coming back around and putting a little more personal element into it.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there actually, I was talking to my friend Lisa about this. Is there actually money in cookbook publishing nowadays? And the reason why I asked that is given the proliferation of digitized platforms such as Pinterest, blogs, Instagram, whatever, like, do people still need to buy cookbooks? Is that still a thing? And more importantly, can you actually make money publishing cookbooks?
You can if you have a personality, if you have a platform. So, that means you have your social media numbers, you have your email subscribers. If you have a platform, you'll still get a good cookbook deal from a publisher. So yes, there's still money in it. Yes, people still buy cookbooks because people love the tactical touch of, like, I have 14 cookbooks right here on my table. And I love this so much more than, trying to navigate online and trying to, if I want to learn something, I have to buy a book. And there's a lot of people like me where it's more of I'm missing the tactical element and the beauty that goes into the hard work of, writing a cookbook. Now, I will say I'll probably never publish another cookbook ever again, because that's just not my style. It takes 2 years to publish a cookbook. It takes so first of all, you've got to get the book deal. Okay, so that might take 6 months. And it takes, it could take up to a year to write the cookbook. And if you ever, crack open a cookbook, it's more than just words and recipes. You've got to test the recipes. Then you've got to, style the recipes, do all the food photography. Everything looks beautiful because time goes into it. So, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And, editing has to happen. Once you submit it to the publisher, then they take it and they design the cover, design the layout. Then they have to edit. There's back and forth editing. There's back and forth negotiations on, what gets left in the book, what gets taken out. And then it gets printed and then shipped, distributed. So that whole process takes a long time. And, it's work. It's a lot of work versus if you publish like an online course on how to do something. Like there's a popular YouTuber that, published a course on how to, sourdough breads, a whole online course. And, you can make really good money really, really fast doing that. And I think I think it is a better way, one, if you're thinking about making money, it's a better way to make money. But two, there's people that love the interaction, that live interaction versus a static book. So it just depends on what you want to do.
Okay. Yeah. The other reason why I asked was I have this friend, Lisa. Like I said, I like to cook. And my friend, Lisa, she likes to cook. And she's always pinging me ideas. Like she's like, hey, we should do like a cookbook. I'm like, there's not much money in cookbook publishing, but apparently you just proved me wrong. So
if you have the platform, there's money. If you don't have a platform, there is no money.
We have no platform, so we're not going to do that.
But you could create, a course, or you could write a digital cookbook and sell that on Amazon, throw that up on Amazon. But again, like if you don't have a platform, you're going to have to spend so much time and effort on PR and marketing to get people to buy it. And then you have to really think about it, Like if there's a cookbook that you want to write, I would partner with someone that already has a platform in food. Yeah. Right. And then that just makes it so much easier. The work is cut in half.
Got it. So I'll stick to my day job. So let's flash forward to the present day. SteamyKitchen.com. What are you trying to turn it into now? I mean, originally it started out as sort of a blog of recipes. Can you talk more about your current ventures and what you're trying to do now?
Sure. Well, actually, I'll talk a little bit about how I transitioned out of doing a 4-hour work week, because I did a 4-hour work week for about 7 years, 5 to 7 years. That's a long time. And at first it was amazing because I had all this free time and I played tennis. I hung out with the kids and I did so many things that I wanted to do. I became incredibly selfish with my time, meaning like, I can do anything that I want and I don't have to work. This is
was it really a 4-hour work week? Like literally?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It really was. Sometimes even less.
Wow.
And it was amazing because I had all this free time. It was like I was retired. But, after a couple of years, I started getting bored. And, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I'm sure you are as well. And if you can imagine like you waking up and you have, what am I going to do today? Maybe I'll go grocery shopping, or maybe I'm going to go visit a friend or have lunch with a friend. I started getting a little depressed because I had no purpose, other than, being a mom, but my kids were growing up. They didn't need mommy 24/7 anymore. So I started like, I just a little bit in depression. I found like I had no connection to very many things. And, after a while, I was like, you know what it is? It's because I'm not paying attention. I have no connection to my business. I didn't care about the readers who came to Steamy Kitchen. I didn't care about the content. It was just about what's the least amount of work that I can do to make the most amount of money. And you can never run a business long-term with that type of mindset. And I must have gotten so lucky with Steamy Kitchen that, I didn't lose my audience and I didn't lose traffic. But starting this year in 2020, in the very beginning, my divorce was finalized, and I just said, okay, I'm ready to do the work again. I got to get back into it and do the hard work again. And January 3rd, woke up in the morning and said, okay, I'm ready to come back to work. And rebuilt a team. So I built a team. I have like 7 people who work with me now, and just started focusing on okay, what kind of value can I bring to readers versus just publishing recipes that anyone can get anywhere at any time. Just a side note with recipes is, people do a search on Pinterest, Instagram, or Google, and they look for, let's say, chicken fried rice. Well, they might go to 3 or 4 different websites before they're like, oh, this is it. But then once they get the recipe, they're out. So there's very little, there's not a lot of loyalty in, people that look for recipes, get it, and then pop out. So I thought, well, I need to add more value then. I want to do something, I can do better. I can add more value to people. And so that's why I started focusing on a different style of eating, which is, bootables, which I love eating bootables. And basically it's a 1-bowl meal. And it's incredibly healthy. And usually if you've been to like a poke place, that's a bootable. There's layers of rice, vegetables, maybe a protein, a sauce, and then a crunchy topping. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to teach people how to do the style of cooking because it's simple. And, that was the angle that and plus there weren't very many brands that had taken on bootables. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity. That's something that's incredibly visual, easy to do, so fun to make. And, it's still kind of on the fringes. So that's what we took on. And then in the middle of the pandemic and quarantine, I was just driving by my son's school, and he's in high school. So I was just driving by, and, there's no classes in session. Everyone's at home. You're supposed to stay at home. And I was looking over, I was about a mile away from the school, and there was this massive long line of cars just slowly moving. And I'm like, what's happening? Is there a school event that I didn't know about? I was like so curious. And as I got closer and closer to the school, I looked over and I saw the cars snaking in and out of a parking lot, like a long line. Like when you go to Disney, there's a long line, you snake in and out. And at the end of the line, trunks were popping open and food was being placed in the trunks. And it hit me like, these people are hungry. These people are hungry. No one, I live in Vegas. Vegas is an entertainment city. So many people have lost their jobs because of COVID. So many people out of work. So many people where, they can't make ends meet. Before, when kids used to go to school to get their school lunches, they don't have that anymore. And I just drove by, and I had to pull over, and I just started crying because, I'm a food professional. And so I always have food in my freezer, in my refrigerator. I have so much food. It's ridiculous because I'm spoiled in that way. If I want to cook spaghetti and meatballs, I have everything here. And sometimes the food spoils and I just throw it away. I don't think about it. Or if there's leftovers and my kids don't want to eat it, it goes bad and I throw it away. And it really hit me that, while I was doing that, I needed to do better. Like, all these people are hungry and I needed to do better. So that's when we started focusing on, okay, well, how can we take the concept of bootables and help people stop waste food? And then I was doing some research, and the average American family of 4 throws away $1,800 worth of food every single year. And that comes out to $150 per month. And if you ask an average American family of 4 to say, here's $150 in cash, now stick it down your garbage disposal or throw it away in the trash can, that's painful. Especially in this day and age during the pandemic, when so many people are unemployment, to say $150 gets wasted every single month just because you didn't eat all the food that you bought, or leftovers. You don't know what to do with leftovers. So we started writing recipes that help people use their leftovers in bootable recipes. We started writing content on, okay, if you have leftover jam, this is what you can do. If you have, 2 carrots left, this is what you can do. And, that is the big difference maker, because now I'm creating content with a purpose to change people's lives, and not just a recipe for chicken fried rice.
Okay. And you're also, I guess you're trying to sell the Bootable as well?
Well, that was just a fun project.
Oh, okay.
I don't care about making money. Actually, 100% of the money from the sale of the bootables goes to the artist in
I
Canada.
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to make money from that because, we make plenty of money on the website already. And
Gotcha.
I love helping artists. I love things that are handmade. And I wanted to create a handmade, beautiful ceramic bowl that's dishwasher safe, microwave safe, oven safe. And it means something when you hold a beautiful handmade object in your hand, like this mug that I'm drinking out of. My friend, made this by hand. It's beautiful. You take care of it. You cherish it. And I think that's the message that I'm trying to get across to people. Like, food shouldn't be thought of as just things that you throw away and you discard when it goes bad. So I created the Bootable that 100% of the money goes to the artist. But I thought it was just something nice to sell and something nice to have.
Okay. And it's just one person, I believe, who's making these bowls.
Yeah, she is. She's in Canada.
Yeah. So you can't necessarily, I know you just said like money or making a profit isn't really your motive here because you're making money elsewhere. So I guess because you're relying on one person, you can't really, if you wanted to, you can't necessarily grow or scale it because you're relying on one person to make this.
Correct. Well, another way to look at it is if we had a subscription in the future, we could every month, something handmade from another artist around the world. And it could be another bowl, it could be a mug, it's something beautiful. That was also a thought in my mind. And we feature a different artist every single month. And also in the box would be your this month's recipes and perhaps sauces. If I had to think a year or two in the future and think about what would I like to do with the Bootable concept, I would love to create a line of sauces that is sold at retail, different types of sauces. Because if we take a step back and think, okay, Jaden, what are you teaching about Bootables? It's just a recipe, but actually it's not. What I want people to do is take last night's grilled steak that you had left over, and I want you to reinvent it into a completely different meal. And maybe it's you put it in a bowl with rice, and then we drizzle on like a spicy Korean sauce on it, and then sprinkle on peanuts. And now that tastes completely different than the grilled steak that you had last night. So the two difference makers are the sauce and a crunchy topping or some fun topping that can completely transform anything that you put in the bowl. So, the same grilled steak, instead of putting a Korean sauce on it, you can put like a Alfredo sauce on your creation and use noodles instead. And then instead of peanuts, it could be, croutons. And that's a completely different meal with a completely different flavor profile. So maybe a line of sauces in the future at retail is a possibility. We're working on a meal plan right now, so we'll be publishing that in a couple of weeks and launching that, teaching people how to use a meal plan. But instead of just a standard meal plan, have you ever followed a meal plan before, Dean?
It's funny. I have. It doesn't work for me for a variety of reasons. But yeah, I've tried.
Yeah, and usually most meal plans will start with recipes, which will give you a list of ingredients, and you take those list of ingredients and you go to the store and buy all these ingredients. Well, we want people to work backwards. So it's a meal plan in reverse. I want you to go shopping in your own home first, because I know you have hundreds of dollars worth of food in your refrigerator, freezer, and pantry. And we want people to start working from your own home first to save money and to prevent food waste. And then I'll give you some Bootable recipes that you can go to the store and supplement with what you don't have. And so see how it works backwards. You start in your own, what do you have right now? What can I use right now? Last night we had roasted chicken. Well, I'm going to use that in a recipe. And now I don't have to buy chicken. I don't have to buy a protein. So that's what we're working on right now. Is our focus is, okay, meal planning, but let's go backwards. Why not use the food you already have?
Okay, so basically sustainability with a twist.
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys, so that wraps up part 1 of 2 of this episode. Part 2 will be dropping in a couple of days. I will leave a link in the description below. And like I said, in part 2, we'll talk more about marketing tactics and how Jaden goes about promoting her website. Until then, I'd appreciate it if you guys give me a like and subscribe if you're looking for new content on all things digital advertising and lead generation. I will talk to you soon. Later. Bye.